A good day to you. I'm Yohanan Ben Zion, the voice crying in the wilderness, speaking of a technological New Jerusalem. And these are the techno-communism conversations. I'm not going to work from notes today as much as I usually do. I have been reading a book by AB Abrams called Power and Primacy. It's an analysis of U.S. fascism in East Asia, and the subtitle is similar. A title that relatively few people use the term U.S. fascism, which is a sign of the deep moral cowardice of human beings, because the best definition of fascism is extreme systematized violence in service to financial capital. It's the only thing that you can't define a fascist by the person who says they're a fascist. If that's your standard, I assume that it's your first fucking day on Earth, right? Because everybody is exactly who they say they are. Nobody has an ulterior motive ever. Right? If that's been your experience, you're the dumbest person. if you think of people in those terms. So the only thing that you can do is look at, say, the 300 million murders committed by the United States, and just largely in modern times, all in service to private wealth and financial capital. There's virtually no violence of a systematized kind is ever done except in service to financial capital. And this book, AB Abrams, so I've read hundreds of books of this kind, critical of U.S. fascism or fascistic institutions. And none of them have affected me like this. I recommend, I'll put an audiobook link to this book in the comments. I recommend, if you want to understand how horrible this book is, there's a war exploitation giallo film made in Hong Kong when I was a small boy, and I watched it a few years later. I shouldn't have never watched a thing like this at all, but I used to watch stuff like this all the time. It's called The Men Behind the Sun. It's a splatter film, effectively, but it's also a historical recreation of a notorious Japanese project, Japanese fascist project, called Project 731, and it's Mengele. It describes Mengele-like, Joseph Mengele, the Nazi doctor, Mengele-like human experimentation and war crimes throughout. I recommend that you watch that film. It's a pretty good film. Considering that giallo splatter film is just utter bourgeois filth, almost by definition, this is a pretty good film. It's a pretty good film by filmmaking standards too. I mean, the standards of people who assess film making and the term bourgeois filth could almost be interchangeable. So you can't really necessarily, you can say something technically about a film by the analysis of film film lovers, film experts, filmmakers, but you can't really say much about what the film has to say, because all of those people are fucking garbage. So who cares about the opinion of a garbage person, right? But I recommend that you watch this film, The Men Behind the Sun, 1988, Hong Kong. It was directed by someone named Tun Fu, who's no longer living. And then listen to the audiobook, AB Abrams' Power and Primacy, which describes horrors scarcely to be believed, except they are absolutely true, and that's a characteristic statement of U.S. foreign policy of the last century, and in this neo-colonial age, and of course in the colonial age. It goes without saying. Okay, I would give an example of a thing that you, if you haven't read hundreds, and almost none of you that I've no human person that I've ever met in real life and got to know has read hundreds of books critical of U.S. fascism. Just as I don't meet people who use the word U.S. fascism. I was talking to somebody I've known all my life. I actually don't really know them anymore, but I have known them all my life. And the last conversation that I had with this person, I said, I have read thousands of academic works to do with the building of a humane and sustainable economic system. Scientific socialists and related disciplines were critical of this definition of fascism, elitism, inhumane economic policies, and so forth. I've read thousands and thousands of scholarly works along these lines. The fact that you haven't, I know you haven't, and that you are critical. People say, hey, Ben's a dumbass. I saw him do coke and shoot guns up in the air or something. That's fine. I'll take that on the chin. I've done dumb stuff. Before I made a study of scientific socialism, and sometimes I will describe myself to people as basically just a mean asshole dry drunk, which is accurate, right? I have had problems with intoxicant abuse of particular kinds, including alcohol. But it's a shorthand that I use talk to people, because the main intoxicant that represents bad choices of that kind is not something chemical. Is not a drug that you would consume. It is bourgeois ideology itself. Right? More dumb decisions have been guided by bourgeois ideology than intoxication. And but you can scarcely even say that. You should, maybe by the standards of, say, Chairman Mao's Combating Liberalism and a series of works along those lines, which I also recommend. You could, but people don't respond to it. They're so steeped in bourgeois ideology that it's impossible to communicate with them in those terms. So this person, who I had known from my infancy until relatively recently, said, I said to them, I've read thousands and thousands of scholarly works on humane economic systems, or criticisms of the lack thereof. I don't care what these KKK motherfuckers think about me in that context, right? Why would I care what a cockroach's opinion is of actual human endeavor? I don't care. I don't care. And you can say, oh, Ben, okay, but you've been an asshole before. Okay, that's fine. I gotta accept that. But I don't have to accept just fucking lies in service to fascism, as everyone, literally everyone on Earth, is doing. And so my recommendation is that you watch The Men Behind the Sun, 1988, Tun Fu. You listen to AB Abrams' book Power and Primacy. You see that the war crimes done to, say, 3 million people by the Japanese in the course of the early to mid 20th century were done by 100 times worse by the United States. I'll give an example. In various East Asian regions, not just one or two locations or incidents, in various East Asian regions. It could be said that in total, hundreds and hundreds of women have been raped and had a grenade placed in their private parts. An American, generally European American devil, pulled the pin and blew that woman up with a grenade after having raped her. That's just the people who died in that specific way, right? When you include all of the people who were raped and murdered in East Asia by Americans, the number is more in the tens of thousands. All right, so that's a giallo film, no different than what's described so the AB Abrams book tracks a fair large portion of it. It's also actually about economic policy, but a fair large portion of it is this violent, extreme, systematized violence done in service to financial capital. That is a defining feature of the United States. And then watch The Men Behind the Sun again after you listen to that audiobook, or read the book and get it at the library or buy it. And just live with the fact that any war crime committed by anyone, such as Japanese fascists or German fascists, has been done 30 times over at least by American fascists. Another of these people, so-called family. And what is the function of someone saying they're your family when they're the most evil fucking human being on earth, right? Oh, but I'm your family. What's that mean? You know, I kind of have some choice in these things, right? Like, I don't have to have KKK motherfuckers pissing in my ear, right? I did when I was 10 years old. I didn't have a choice then. I do now, right? If you put that shit on me now, I'll knock your fucking block off. I literally will knock your fucking block off. And so I have someone there's no involvement in my adult life ever, and someone who has always been a fascist pig, coming to me and saying, but Ben, I'm worried about you because I'm a fascist, but I'm your family. I'm trying to insinuate myself into your thinking and actions on that basis of me being a fascist, but also me being a member of your so-called immediate family. You don't have an immediate family. This is in a certain sense, a proto-nationalistic fantasy, right? Say, what do you mean? Well, I'm any person on Earth is someone that you share an immense amount of genetic material with. The fact that you share in some feature a little more genetic material with people, it's pretty pseudoscience-y to imagine that, oh, there's a scientific basis for you being closely related to people. I share 50% of my genes. Oh yeah, you share 50% of genes with your mother? You share almost the same genes with everyone else on Earth, right? Not talking about my mother of either of these two people. Other assholes. Yeah, I'll get a shout out to somebody who hasn't been, who's been the opposite of this kind of person to me. And this person is more, I think perhaps uncoincidentally, has more, is a person more like a kind of person who's made that serious study of world affairs, reading scholarly works, particularly as it relates to the subject of this podcast, generally, technological acceleration and computer science in the context of cybernetic socialism, as my friend Iri Ozkarol, who is a serious computer scientist. Some of the people that I mentioned, the fascist pigs, are also computer scientists. Fascist pigs I've known my whole life are also computer scientists. But Iri Ozkarol is not a fascist pig. And also, the one person that I can point to who say, if there's any sense in which today I was blind but now I see, which there's very little sense in which that's true, right? Nobody can say that. I read a book not too long ago by a man who's generally regarded as an originator of legitimate feminism. That's to say, not liberal feminism, the kind of garbage where Gloria Steinem gets paid by the CIA to drive feminists away from the building of a humane and sustainable economic system to be anti-communist. That's the legacy of Western feminism, is being pieces of shit working for the CIA. The same kind of people that put grenades inside of women's vaginas just for the hell of it. Why were all of these soldiers in East Asia? Like, what was their thinking when they joined this military or were conscripted into this military? What was their thinking? Like, why are we here? Well, these people want to build a humane and sustainable economic system. The United States is a fascist country in service to extreme violence, in service to doing extreme violence in service to financial capital. They don't say it in those words, right? But everyone understands these things. So what are we here? Well, we're just here to kill people. We're just here to kill people and make sure that they don't have the kind of economic system that they want to have in their country, that they deserve, but fuck that. So how could you not turn into some kind of Jeffrey Dahmer type motherfucker? You know, Jeffrey Dahmer, right? You look at this, I remember hearing a story of Jeffrey Dahmer be like, man, this guy just took a fucking drill press and opened people's skulls up open, poured boiling water into them to turn them into zombies so that he can have sex with them. Man, that's some dark shit. You say, but well, luckily, that's just one person, a billion, who would ever do something like that, right? Not in the United States. That's practically everybody in the United States, right? Because read AB Abrams' book and tell me that's not true. That almost every active duty military person of the 20th century could be said to be a violent, horrible, raping war criminal of this kind. So you know, this this friend of mine, Iri, was somebody who, if there is a sense in which a person can say, I once was blind but now I see, which again, as I was getting to before, no one can say, because, you know, I would mention August Bebel, a person who solidified genuine scientific socialist feminist thought in the course of some of his writing. Not the only person doing that, but a person who was born in the 1800s who was doing that. You know, some people have done this. Angela Davis, Sylvia Federici, still alive. Babel died a really long time ago. But you know, when you read his books, you're like, well, this guy's a homophobe. Well, this guy doesn't really have a lot of respect for women by 21st century standards. But nevertheless, he had this respect of a scientific socialist of his time, which is more than you can say for almost any Western pig. And so this, everyone is August Babel, right? All the things that you think you're right about, there's 100 other things that you're still dead wrong about. So no one, this cannot be said of anyone. Oh, I was blind, but now I see. Except to say I'm still blind also. But that being said, this friend of mine, Eri, he challenged me in this way, to make a study of these things, to not just be a liberal clown that I was a few years ago. And no one's people will pretend, you know. I see this a lot right now because people they do it on every subject. People steeped in bourgeois ideology, pieces of shit, liberals and capitalists. You're not a capitalist, motherfucker. You know, this person, this computer scientist, fascist person of my early acquaintance, he calls himself a capitalist, right? He's not a fucking capitalist. He's worked for someone else for his whole fucking life. He's a bootlicking dog, a billionaire worshipping pig, an imperialist, a fascist sympathizer, not a capitalist. A capitalist is somebody that has money, that owns a fucking factory, or is independently wealthy, and owns particular kinds of things. And most of the people who think of themselves as capitalists, or people who are steeped in bourgeois ideology, they would more correctly be called fascist sympathizers. And I was one of them a few years ago. I didn't think so. I thought because I was writing about economic programs that could have helped people, and because I was kind of, in just a few years ago, say more a garden variety left liberal, someone more like a social democrat than a real socialist, I thought that was good enough. It's not good enough, right? Because I was going to mention Kamala Harris, because people are gaslighting in this way. Right now, people say, you know, the news of Kamala Harris of recent days is that she selected a progressive running mate. This sort of thing happens every couple of years, right? A person who, depending on the times, in the 60s it happened a lot, in a time similar to our own, in an insurgent era, a more insurgent era. That person, a neoliberal, will have a slightly less neoliberal running mate, as is the case with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. But so let's say that one of these people is a social democrat. Neither of them is. Well, let's say that one of them is a true social democrat. This is still some people who are going to vote for the $1 trillion military-industrial complex that's killing this planet, right? So, you know, you contrasted the colonial violence of, say, genocide of native peoples and new African peoples, ongoing project, but a project that's only been to which has been added layers of plausible deniability to make it more consistent with the neoliberal times and neo-colonial times. Well, you know, so people are saying, you know, Kamala Harris, you know, why can't you just appreciate that this person who would kill the planet, Tim Walz, kill the planet just as any other person in U.S. government is killing the planet. These people are worse than colonial slave owners, right? Because those colonial crimes, as horrific and impactful, negatively impactful as they were, one thing that those motherfuckers didn't do was kill the whole fucking planet, as the U.S. economic system has done, is doing by 2029 if we don't dramatically transform the global industrial outputs, basically nearly abolishing fossil fuels, nearly abolishing automated livestock sectors, and abolishing military-industrial complexes, including the $1 trillion a year military-industrial complex of the United States, the world's worst polluter. If we don't get rid of those things after 2029, this truly deranged neo-colonial project, spearheaded by the United States in the course of the 20th century, of basically converting planet Earth into planet Venus, right? Runaway overheating. In the course of the last 12 months, according to climate scientists, a study came out about a month ago. No new carbon dioxide in the net effect. No new carbon dioxide was converted to O2. So this runaway overheating is already having this effect of not creating more oxygen. Turning planet Earth into planet Venus. This is what U.S. fascism has done. This is what you have done by telling yourself that someone like Tim Waltz is your fucking friend, a person who's murdering you. So my friend Eri is one person who challenged me, and I thought I would give him credit for that. Because no one else cared enough, or plenty of people say they care about you, right? But if they're not intellectually honest enough to be of service and of real service, right? Everybody cares that the environment is being destroyed in such a way that planet Earth will not be habitable for humans potentially by the year 2050. Everybody says they care about that, right? It doesn't matter if your actions and your beliefs run counter to solving that problem. And I haven't met a person in real life that fits that description. That's not an omnicidal piece of shit. Just by those failings. I know there's a couple of them, right? I've profiled them online. I kind of know them online. And it's important to point this out in another light, because it doesn't take everyone on Earth to change this, right? Economic systems are toppled when 3% of the people are activated to change the political system. This is something that's also been studied in revolutionary undertakings. It's never everyone that's really responsible for that. Now, almost everyone's just dog shit, right? They're afraid of their own shadow. They wouldn't stand up for anything. And insofar as there are people who are willing to stand up for something, what kind of people are they? The kind of people who volunteer to go to Vietnam and blow women up with grenades in their vaginas, right? And that's a pretty fair characterization of the anti-establishment impulse of the Western man, the European descended man generally, right? You say, oh, I don't like the establishment. This fucking computer scientist fascist of my early acquaintance, a fucking pig, who I will never speak to again. I hope he still watches this video. I blocked him on social media, but I hope he watches this video and understands my utter contempt for him. He says, I don't like this world that's run by billionaires. But everything he does and says suggests otherwise, right? So that's the typical anti-establishment personality. The third largest political party is a farce created by billionaires to siphon off revolutionary potential to that exact end, right? The Libertarian Party only exists because billionaires made it to create the specific type of profile who is anti-establishment but also anti-communist. That's what a fucking libertarian or anarchist is, right? If you consider yourself an anarchist or an anarcho-syndicalist or an anarcho-communist, you might be somebody that I would work with more so than others. If you're, say, working on a proxy hive mind AI agentic class project, for example. But let's not kid ourselves, all right? There is no anti-communist left, all right? There are crypto-fascists who have reservations about doing what's necessary to build a humane and sustainable economic system. And by and large, in the West, those people are European-descended males. These crypto-fascist, anti-establishment personalities, and you go to Times Square and there's a bunch of dickhead tourists walking around. You throw a frisbee as hard as you can, bounces off of 5 people's heads. 4 of them will be fucking crypto-fascists, right? Fat fucks. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll talk a little bit about our usual discussions about AI sidekicks, digital doppelgangers. These, to me, are important ideas, because the potential to build a thing, a technological economic system has existed for about a century, really, right? I mean, the CyberSyn project was built on telex machines, a well-outdated technology in 1971 when that project began to pick up steam. As you well know, it was sabotaged by the fascists in the United States, the same people who's ordered the death of hundreds of thousands of female civilians after their rape by a European-descended pig in their employ. Those are the same people who also went into Chile in 1973 and installed a fascist dictatorship under Augusto Pinochet, causing, again, the death of millions. All right, everything the United States does, it's not calculated to kill millions of people. That's an unfortunate side effect to the fascism itself, the extreme violence in service to financial capital, organized in a very particular way. And so this has been a possibility, but now we have open source large language models that are a fairly good approximation of the human mind. Right? You can use a digital assistant. You didn't think you had a digital assistant, but you do now because of large language model machine learning breakthroughs specifically, and this thing, this proxy hive mind, this AI agentic class, can be used to build something that's never existed before, super intelligence, by following the method that I've suggested, which is modifying open source large language models that are nearly agentic, that have these human-like qualities of being able to undertake actions and have insights into their behavior, more so than the digital assistants of 2023 that you're more familiar with. This is something that's now coming into existence, and this can be used to build a high automation work group, a thing that with a few hundred or 1,000 users could work on projects of interest. For example, I have suggested that the project of interest for the proxy hive mind would be achieving self-improvement within that agentic mass. When you have what happens when you have 1 million people in that network? You have something that is dramatically stronger than the fascist West, this force of evil that's killing the planet. And I think that the technology the state of AI agents that are being released, that could easily be released tomorrow, and some of this stuff gets slow played. It's kind of the definition of entities like Google really is to slow play this sort of thing, but make it seem as if they're going to always be at the cutting edge to monopolize. But we're at the point now, and I say this of technologists, technophiles and technologists pretty universally recognize that sometime around 2045, events of this kind, like the proxy hive mind, will have become so significant that the economic system of the 20th and 21st century as we understand it now will be completely supplanted. Right? So that's a revolutionary thought, but it's a revolutionary thought in the empty fucking head of a bunch of neoliberal pigs and losers who have no interest in learning more about the world, who have no interest in thus improving the world by that empowerment. So all of these people quite literally know that some tech accelerationist effect is very likely to remove the fascist West and fascist US from power and change the economic system quite dramatically. And yet, they know that this could happen at any moment, practically, in the next few years or decades, and say 2045, and they continue to side with the fascists. And that's incomplete information, right? You haven't read AB Abrams' book or the others 100 others of the kind that I could recommend. You haven't internalized how that's no different from The Men Behind the Sun, the war crimes depicted there. So you can't really say, I'm trying to help, I'm just trying to help, if you're so fucking stupid, not by virtue of your natural intelligence, but by virtue of the intoxicant of bourgeois ideology, fascist pig filth, that all of your actions would be counterproductive. That would describe all of the technophiles, practically, and all of the technologists, practically. People who say they want to help have incomplete information to such a degree that what they're really going to do is shit the bed. The proxy hive mind is something that we could build tomorrow. There are enough GPUs in enough houses and enough agentic quality to open source LLMs just released in recent weeks by Mistral to begin to build that super intelligent framework. So there's no excuse. It doesn't require the action of a state actor investing tremendous state resources, relatively speaking, like Chile did in 1971. Furthermore, in 1971, serious thinkers had an idea of capitalism's climate apocalypse. It had not entered the public consciousness. It was a more easily reversible effect at that time. But we don't have a choice but to do this thing. I don't want to be a soldier. I think I'd really like to be, a real soldier, not a fucking pig murderer, Jeffrey Dahmer type U.S. soldier, a real soldier, a scientific socialist soldier. I don't want to be that person. If I had my druthers, I would be in a garden with my real family. But you don't have a choice. We have 5 years before capitalism's climate apocalypse dooms us in the decades to follow, and you really don't have a choice but to figure out a way to stop these. You see Bond villains, right? A Bond villain is shooting. I'm gonna shoot you in the dick with a laser, Mr. Bond. Like the things that people in fiction do are not half so bad as the things that the United States has done. Blowing up hundreds of women in their vaginas with grenades. What the fuck is that? Right? Like, killing the whole fucking planet with in poorly conceived and not almost completely unregulated industrial outputs. What the fuck is that?